Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Charles Maring, and today in the art studio, I'm continuing my Adobe Lightroom Masterclass series here on our channel. Today, we're going to talk about three things related to the Develop module. We're going to talk about the histogram so we know how to correctly read it and see our imagery from a numerical point of view. We're going to talk about the crop tool as well, and we're going to talk about the left-hand side of the Develop module, which is the presets panel. But first, let's cut to that intro. So yeah, Adobe Lightroom, I'm starting from the basics, working our way forward. At some point, this will be a full-blown masterclass, kind of a long-form series here on our channel. Join me over at the computer and we'll get started with today's episode. I'm doing all of this live, mind you, so if I skip a beat, please forgive me. I'm kind of working my way through this. Let's dive in. I'm going to go into the library module first here today, just to show you that I've done a little bit of work to get us kind of up to date here. So if you caught my last video, which was talking about the library module, I talked about organizing of images. One of the things I talked about was the rating or star system when it comes to organizing your photographs. I went through all of these, let me show you, and I just quickly used my left and right arrow keys, scrolling through, hitting the number 1 anytime I wanted to have an image that we took a look at again, so that I could have images selected for this purpose to share with you. And so if we take a look and we go to unrated, you'll see that I started with a catalog of 553 photographs during this portrait session, and I narrowed it to showing rated. Anything greater than or equal to 1 star, we've narrowed down to about 68 photographs for the purposes moving forward. So let's talk about some of these photographs. We'll go into some of the tools in the Develop module. I'm clicking in the upper right, going from Library to Develop, and we'll get started on this section. Let me see, there's got to be a photograph that I can, yeah, this is a good starting point. Yeah, that's probably it. This is a good starting point. Okay, this photograph has some work to be done, as you can see. It is detailed from highlight to shadow. We know that because we can look in the upper right and see our histogram here. We are not all the way to the edge here. We are not all the way to the edge here. Let's talk about reading histograms just a little bit here so that we understand what we're looking for. What we want to do technically with our photography is a good starting point is to make sure that we have detail in the highlights of our photograph. Our whites are not blown out. And we have detail in the shadows of our photograph. The blacks are not crushed too much. And the reason being is because when we go to print, printers don't always see all the way to the edge of the print, on the white side or the black side. They're not always capable of doing that. So we want to make sure our black point and white point are just a little bit under if we can help it. And so let's look at how we know this. Now, if I go into the upper right here and I click on this arrow, this is showing my shadows or blacks of the histogram, and this is showing the whites or the bright sections of my histogram as well. I'm going to click on this, and that's going to bring up the ability to see that. Now, I haven't really clipped anything yet, so I'm going to go down just for the purpose of this, and I'm going to take my black point and change it. And what you'll see happening is that now you can see, okay, there's no detail anywhere there is blue in this section. Same thing with the white. If I click here, I haven't lost any detail in the whites. I know that because I don't see any red. But if I go down here just for the purpose of this training and I change my white point, you'll see that it starts to show in red anywhere I'm clipping my whites or crushing my blacks, something we definitely don't want to do. I can just as easily toggle that setting or the histogram whites and blacks clipping by hitting the J key on our keyboard, and that will bring it in and out. So quick shortcut to do that. Or if I uncheck these boxes, these arrow boxes, I can simply, let me hit J, I can simply scroll over and it will show me my blacks are crushed and my whites, we've lost detail in the highlights. So that's how we know our histogram is just way off base if our image does have clipping in our shadows or our highlights. Let's go ahead and set that back to 0 for our white point. I'm just going to double click in this box, hit it to 0, double click in the blacks, hit it to 0. We're right back to square one where we imported. Let's talk about the crop tool just a little bit as well. This is the crop tool. If we hover over any tool in Adobe Lightroom, it will eventually tell you what the shortcut key is, which in this case, the crop overlay is R. So I can click on it to go ahead and go into the crop mode. You can see I'm using the Fibonacci code here for my crop lines. I can just as easily change that by hitting the 0 key, or I should say the O key on our keyboard. And now we're showing kind of a crop, what we'll lose if we crop to 5:7, 2:3, or 4:5. Hitting the O key again, we're seeing a whole bunch of horizontal and vertical lines. That's a useful tool. Hitting 0 again, a few less lines, but showing kind of how we could center our image up or our subject up here. Hitting again, another option for crop lines. It's all about personal taste and what fits your particular taste in your image. Hitting again, this shows us kind of our upper thirds or lower thirds. And hitting again, we're back to another crop mode here in our channel. And so I'm going to hit it again and show you that you can also hit Shift O on your keyboard, and that will change the direction of whatever crop lines that you're using as well, so that you can see lower thirds, upper thirds horizontally, vertically, so on and so forth. So that's how you change all of that around. Let's go, let me hit 0, and I'll kind of get to one of my favorites here. I generally work in this mode. I find it most pleasing for me. So with that said, generally I'm going to crop to an 8:10 more times than not. And the reason being is an 8:10 is generally somewhere down the middle. 8:10 and 4:5 are standardized crops for frames, things of that nature. And I'll crop there generally because then I know if I crop to an 8:10, when I upload it online for a client to see, if they order a 5:7, it's just simply going to cut off a little bit of the edges on the right and left. And if I'm vertical, and 4:6, same thing. It's going to crop just a little bit more narrow, but a usable crop for all of those particular formats. So let's go ahead and use this tool at 8:10. I'm just going to go down and I'm going to click on the corner, kind of bring it in a little bit closer. We can also at that point decide, do we want to rotate the crop just a little bit? Do we think it looks best rotated? We can make those decisions. We can also go over to the angle tool here, do it as well over here, but I find it's just as easy to do it manually by clicking on the image and using my mouse to do so. We're going to hit enter to bring that crop in. Let's hit O again I gotta be in crop mode, just to show you what I meant by the 8:10, 5:7 crop factor. Hit Shift O to turn it vertically. So if I'm here and I crop it to 8:10, I know that if it's a 5:7, she's still gonna be centered. I'm just gonna lose a little off the left and right when it goes to the lab, or 2:3, same thing. It's gonna show what it's gonna look like, what I'm gonna crop when I send it to the lab. So hitting enter, we're cropped in once again. Talking about the crop tool a little further, we have lots of different options here. We can lock our crop so that it stays locked on whatever aspect ratio we prefer. We can do it as shot, how we did it in the camera. We can go original, whatever our original crop was. We can customize it any way that we wish. We can go 1:1 for Instagram, so lots of different dimensions and options kind of pre-built into it as well. You can also enter custom. So that's kind of the gist of the crop tool, how I think about it. One last thing I'll mention is that if you go quickly with your movement, it'll go from horizontal to vertical if you don't have it locked. So as you can see, now it went to vertical. I'm going to click here and kind of move quickly. It goes to horizontal. And so that's how you can change if you find that you need to crop horizontally instead as well. So there's your crop tool, everybody. Pretty simple. And those two tools are fundamental to understanding to processing photographs here in the Develop module. Lastly, I want to dive over to the left side and talk about presets really quickly. Adobe Lightroom ships with a whole bunch of presets, and I don't really use them, to be quite honest with you. I use them possibly as a starting point for ideas, but ultimately I create my own presets based on what I like. So it's kind of like Instagram filters per se, that you can customize to be your own looks for your own studio or your own style of photography. So there's some color ones. It's a good starting point to get some ideas. Here's some black and whites. Again, good starting point for ideas. But ultimately, you'll probably want to create your own, something we will be covering in a future episode here. As you can see, going down to the bottom, marring presets. If I open it up, here's a bunch of my presets. And you can see I kind of have like an antique split here. I have kind of a soft focus effect here that kind of brightens things and gives kind of a soft feel to things. I have a kind of like a camera monochrome, just basic, simple monochrome. I have a contrasty black and white that is a good starting point. Ultimately, we still have to customize this based on each individual image, but the presets give you a really good starting point to be able to share ideas quickly with clients and for yourself as well. Let's talk about the history palette down below. If we scroll down, history is incredibly important because it allows you to go back in time. You can just as easily go Command Z, which is going to take you back. You can see undo crop, undo rectangle, undo crop rectangle, and it'll just kind of take you back in time one step at a time back in history. Or you can make huge jumps back in history by clicking in the history palette where you want to go. We'll take it all the way back to the original here by going to import at the very bottom. Now we're back to square one. Collections are also here on the left-hand side. I talked about collections in our last episode here on our channel. So go back and see that if you want to dive even further into learning about collections, how you can organize your photographs as well. And that's a wrap for today. A little step forward here in our masterclass here on our channel. I plan to continue this weekly on a regular basis so that I can build this entire series for those who want to learn Adobe Lightroom from the ground up, a very kind of slow process masterclass here on our channel. It will get more sophisticated, more challenging as we do move forward. But heck, you got to start somewhere, right? So that's a wrap for today, everybody. I appreciate you. Have a great one. Take care.